Alright guys, welcome back to the shop. So I've got my morning coffee, we've got the post leg that we fitted up yesterday. If you guys pay attention to the thumbnail in yesterday's video, you'll notice that this is the exact same orientation I had it in that picture. So you can probably guess when I actually took that picture. But the reason I set it up like this is because I just kind of wanted to see how strong this connection actually is. So it's kind of sketchy right now. If I turn to the left or the right, I'm gonna end up with my face. But if I lean straight back, oh, that's not gonna go well either. But I can pull on it pretty good. I got to be very careful not to pull these clamps off, but I'm leaning on it, I'm pulling back with my full body weight there, and there's not an ounce of movement to it. So this whole bolt and the tenon setup that we have here is a very solid connection. I think this is going to be way more than strong enough to do whatever we need it to do. So one of the comments I wanted to address that came up on one of the previous videos is it seems like I'm overbuilding this, because like I mentioned in one of the earlier videos, the frame of this bed is not actually going to be holding any physical weight. It's just basically just a facade around a bed platform that moves around and all that. So the reason that I'm building it so strongly is in case that someday it needs to be modified to be an actual bed frame. It's one of those things where no matter what I was going to do with this bed frame, it's going to be something that's going to last a very long time. So if you're going to build something that's going to last a long time, you're better off to overbuild it for what you need right now and build it in a way so that in the future, if it needs to be modified, it can still be useful. Because all it will take in the future to modify this bed to actually become a normal bed frame, you know, something that will hold a mattress, screw on another board that will actually hold all your support slats, put your support slats in, and now you've got a fully functional bed. So for what we're doing here, for building this facade of a bed frame, we are overbuilding it. But we're building it that way in order to make sure that it is a useful thing in the future. And so I was thinking about this issue that we're having with this first nut that we put in here. I was trying to figure out all night how I could do it better. And I think it's actually a pretty simple solution. For this one, I'm gonna need to figure out some way to shim out the hole to make sure that our nut can't twist. But for the rest of them, rather than drilling that initial first hole with a 1/2" bit, I just have to drill it with a 3/8 bit. These nuts that I have are about 3/8 of an inch wide. So what that'll mean is that it should be a near perfect fit. And if I need to loosen it slightly, then I can. Because I don't want that whole extra 1/8 of an inch that I have in this one here, where the nut can get completely out of alignment, because obviously that causes an issue. So we want a nice little slot where this can drop in just about perfectly. We can put the bolt in and it should work out. So second attempt here, we can now drop the nut in and it doesn't twist back and forth, and we can actually put the bolt in and it lines up. The only issue is that when we start turning the bolt, the nut just starts spinning in place. So we've made it too wide now, so that is not going to work for what we need. You need to be able to put a socket on this bolt, turn it, and then have that nut stay in place so you can actually pull the bed frame together here. So that is not going to be a functional solution. So now we need to fix two of these mortises. We need to fix the one on the far side of this that is too wide, so we make it so that it doesn't, to make sure that that nut is not twisting, and we need to fix this one to make sure that nut can't spin freely. So all around, this is not a good process, I have to say. There has to be a better way to do this. I see this all the time on people, the way people make bed frames. So I think I'm going to hop onto YouTube for a little bit and just see how people are doing this, because there's got to be a better way than I'm doing it right now, because the way I'm doing it just seems way too inaccurate. So I spent a little bit of time on Google and YouTube, and I think I realized what the problem is, and mainly it's just that I didn't know what I was doing when I got into this. I did a lot of research on, bed bolts, how you hold this stuff together, but I didn't understand what size those bed bolts were. The other part of this, the other kind of minor problem of this is that we're using a normal nut, whereas, I found a lot of it, I did find examples of other people doing it this way, but the other part of this is that these are the bolts that I'm using. So this is a 1/2 inch by 13 thread. It's a pretty hefty bolt. The normal hardware you would use for these bed bolts on a bed like this is 1/4-20. It's that size. So you can see there that we have a slight difference in the size of the bolts that we're actually using here. And then the benefit of if you use a 1/4-20 bolt is you can use something called a barrel nut, which is just this round thing. So all you'd have to do is just drill a single hole straight down into the board, lined up with the hole that we have going into it, and then you just turn your bolt into that. So the problem is I would love to run down to Lee Valley, get the proper bed hardware, some 1/4-20 bolts with some good barrel nuts, stuff that would make this whole process a lot easier. The only issue is we have that in all 4 of our legs now. And that hole is going to be just way too big to fit a 1/4-20 bolt. So we have to stick with what we got. And I think that what we have is going to be a really good option. It's going to be absolutely solid as can possibly be, but it is definitely way too big. You're not supposed to use 1/2 inch bolts. You only really apparently need to use 1/4 inch bolt. We'll take that as a good learning lesson, and on any future beds I build, I'll make sure to use the appropriate hardware. So it looks like that is our solution right there. So all I did is I took this offcut piece from when we were milling the rest of the boards. It's super thin off the bandsaw there, maybe a 32nd of an inch thick in some places. And I just packed it in on either side of the nut there. So now the nut is perfectly locked in place, and I can still get it out if I need to do maintenance. And if it gets stripped out, I can replace it. But it's firmly locked in place, even better than the other side. And also what I was able to do here is as I was packing in the material on one side, I noticed that the nut was shifting too far. So I was able to pack material in on the other side to make sure that the nut is now perfectly centered. So now when you go to put the bolt in, everything just kind of lines up exactly where it needs to be. If we do this on the other 2 that we have to do, and even on the one that we have to fix on the other side, if we cut the mortise oversized on the width, then all we have to do is just shim it out, pack in some of that extra material to make sure that nut is not going to move around. It's a lot easier to cut something intentionally oversized than to try and cut something specifically to size and then, obviously have it fail as we saw here. And what I might do on the other side is I might oversize it intentionally. That way I can pack material in there, and that might help prevent it from skewing when we actually put the bolt in. So that might be the solution on the other side too, is just to oversize it slightly, pack it with a bunch of material and shims just to make sure that nut is locked securely in place. Okay, so we've got all of our bolts attached, and what I did is after I put in all the little wedges, I just threw some super glue on the wedges and the nut to just try and see if that helps hold anything together. Now, plan B here, in case all of these start to fail, I'm going to test them pretty rigorously before I fully finish the bed here. But what we want to make sure of is that they're not going to move around and twist and eventually crush the fibers of those wedges that we just pushed in there and come loose. If in my testing that does happen, then all we have to do is just widen this slot so that we can fit in a wrench. So then in order to tighten these, all you would need is a 3/4 wrench and a 3/4 socket. You'd drop the wrench in, tighten up the socket. It would be a completely normal way to do it. There's not really anything, I don't think there'd be anything wrong with having to use a wrench. If we can get them to work this way, that's great. If not, it's not that big of a deal to just widen the slot just a little bit so we can get a wrench around those nuts. So that is a side rail for a king-size bed. It looks so tiny out here. Again, it's only the length of my workbench, which makes it seem just really small. But I feel like once we actually get this set up in a bedroom, it's going to feel like a king-size bed frame. Right now, it just feels tiny. I mean, even the headboard here seems really short. I mean, it's a 4-foot tall headboard, which is pretty standard size. So I think, again, it's all because just out in the shop here, everything seems so small. But as soon as we get it inside, this is going to seem pretty massive. I mean, it does seem kind of massive because that is a solid 12-inch wide board there. But yeah, that is looking really sweet right now. All right, guys, so we're going to be ending the video kind of awkwardly in my office here. I'm just going to get some of the footage off my camera, start editing this video, trying to put it together. And I want to say that I'm really sorry for how low energy this video has been so far. Thursdays for me just really suck. I bought into this farmer's market at the very beginning of the summer, thinking that'd be a good way for me to go sell some cutting boards, just kind of get my name out there and that. And so far what it's turned into for basically the whole summer is I have to give up my whole afternoon and whole evening of being in the shop, working on projects, doing fun stuff, to go and sit in a soccer field and not make any money. So it's a really bad time. On Thursdays, I find it very hard, to get myself to get up and get going. So the fact that I was able to get out in the shop this morning and just get those bolts installed is, that's pretty good. Normally on Thursdays, before I started doing this daily upload stuff, I would just kind of not do anything. I just couldn't get myself going. I couldn't get it started on a project because it's such a disappointing day. Also, conveniently today, I have new neighbors moving in right across the alley from me. So they have their moving truck parked in the alley. I can hear them kind of moving in and out of the truck. So it's very awkward for me, talking to the camera, being kind of loud and obnoxious as I normally am. I don't really want the new neighbors to think I'm a crazy person talking to myself in the garage, even though that is pretty much exactly what I am. So it's one of those things where when I can hear people just outside, I find it very uncomfortable to be recording the videos because it's just, I don't know, it's just one of those weird things I haven't quite gotten over yet. So overall, just not a great day to be in the shop recording videos, and I really do apologize for that. I still am gonna put out this video because I think that, it's one of those things. I wanted to do these daily videos. It's a challenge that I'm trying to stick myself to. So even when I have a somewhat bad day, I still want to just try and do it, even if it's just a matter of just sticking with the routine. So tomorrow's video is going to be a lot better. We're actually going to get started on the headboard and the footboard because now that we have all of our bolts installed, we know that all of our structural stuff is together, we can finally start on the headboard and the footboard. And I think it's going to be a super exciting thing because we get to cut a bunch of joinery with the router, we get to figure out how we're going to size those really long boards, and we get to see if our epoxy patch on that knot has actually worked. Because if it hasn't, then that also means that I get to do a quick lumberyard run tomorrow. So overall, tomorrow is going to be a pretty good day, I think. So again, I do apologize for how low energy this video was, but tomorrow is going to be better. But anyways, guys, I will see you in the next video.